Hey, welcome back. My name's Justin. Today's going to be my review of the Roland TD316. This drum set is replacing the TD17 KVX2. That was a great drum set, and I owned the one right before that. And so now that we have a complete new generation, this isn't a mid-gen refresh, this is a super important drum set for them, because $2,000 is a price that a lot of people are shopping in. It's sort of like that lower mid-range where you can get something that sounds great, that has tons of editing, the pads aren't crap, and they're not overly tiny. As always, I let you guys know how I get access to the gear that I'm reviewing. In this case, it is a loan unit from Roland. They're not paying me to make this video, and also I'm not even keeping the drum set. It will eventually go back to the company. Today's video is brought to you by eDrum Center. If you're shopping for an electronic drum set from Yamaha, Alesis, Roland, really anybody, they've got you covered. They sell all the best brands, they've got all the replacement parts that you need, they also sell drum racks and stands, and they have knowledgeable people on staff that can answer your questions. If you want to save a couple of bucks and also help support the channel at the same time, I've got a small discount link to the whole website in the description below. So let's start with what comes in the box and what's the size of everything. The drum rack, the pads, everything. The hi-hat is the Roland VH10. This is 12 inches across, and it's a single top cymbal sitting on an open and closed hi-hat controller mounted to an acoustic hi-hat stand. Be aware you have to budget for the stand because that does not come included with the drum set. That catches some people off guard. The crash cymbals are 12 inches across, just like the hi-hat, and they are the CY12C Ts. I believe T stands for thin. The ride cymbal is 14 inches across, very similar like overall vibe to the crash cymbals. The snare drum is 12 inches across, the toms are 8, 8, and 10 inches across, and the kick drum has a 5-inch playing surface, I believe, but the entire mechanism, the shell, whatever you call it, I think it's closer to 7.5 inches across. Just like the hi-hat stand, the kick drum pedal is not included. The drum rack that all these pads are sitting on is the MDS Compact 2. It's pretty decent. A couple of things that stand out to me. When you're unboxing it, the front two legs are sort of joined together in like a U shape. Also, you have to decide when you're setting this up. Do you want to have the left side of the drum set higher and the right side lower, or vice versa? I decided to have this side of the drum set be the highest, and then the module can be a little bit lower down. The cymbal arms, these are basically sticks with ball mounts up top. The combination of the two allows you to get the angle exactly the way you want, so no complaints there. When it comes to the drums, the snare is the most adjustable, as it should be. It's on a ball mount and it's on an arm that sticks out from the drum rack, so you can position it however you want in 3D space. The high toms are the most limited because the way they're set up on the drum rack, you can only tilt them up and down, but you can't sort of tilt them from side to side like this. The floor tom is the middle ground between the two. It's not a ball mount, but you can tilt it from side to side, or you also can tilt it forward and backwards. Because I'm reviewing the TD516 and the 316, I had to set both of them up in like the same day. And so by the time I got to set up this drum set, I was pretty quick about it. But I did notice that if you're not in practice for setting up electronic drum racks, it might take you a little bit. So just be aware that the setup time for this drum set, if you're doing it for real, like you're trying to make it very comfortable and set up right, not just like Guitar Center level, it will take you a little bit longer to set this kit up than you might think. Now, a question that some people have is how much space does this drum set take up in a room? Because some people, they just have like a corner of a bedroom, they want to make sure it actually fits. Well, I can't tell you everybody's setup because it just depends on how far you open the drum rack and how far you close it. But I measured it at 65 inches by 34 inches. So figure out if that fits in your room. The front of the drum rack, this might be a question you have, can you get a bigger kick drum later? The answer is yes, but it depends on what you're trying to upgrade to. So it works with the Roland KD12. I measured it, and I actually put it right there so you can see in the footage. But you can't like put an 18-inch kick drum there because the space is about 17 inches across. Okay, so now let's talk about trigger performance, see inside of the pads, and just overall, what do I think about everything? So starting with the cymbals, these aren't anything new. They were on the previous iteration of the drum set, and they're good. The VH10 may not be revolutionary. It first came out in 2018, but it's a very decent hi-hat. I'm eventually hoping that they upgrade and replace it, but it does what it needs to do. It also can control the pitch of some tom instruments depending on the kit. So if I go to kit 68, Air from Asia, the crash cymbals are the CY12CTs, and they do everything that I need them to do. I can get bow hits, I can get edge hits, I can choke them. They aren't 360, you do have to play on the front half, but they come with cymbal rotation stoppers in the box, which is like a triangle that sits on top of the stand, and they work just fine. I also like the ride cymbal. It's basically like a scaled up version of the crashes, but it also has a bell zone, so bell, bow, and edge. It does have one more trick though. It has positional sensing, and the module supports it. I don't think the TD17 KVX2 had this, so it's cool to see that feature on a drum set of this price. Now moving over to the drums, the high toms are the Roland PD8H. These are all new pad designs. They got rid of the inner plastic rim of the PDX 6 and 8 pads back in the day. I didn't like those. I feel like a lot of people thought they were kind of dumb. You would sometimes, nick the plastic inner rim with your stick, and it was just annoying. So they got rid of that, thank goodness, and these pads are pretty good. I like them. These are dual zone. You get rim and head zones. The sensors, I believe, are right under the V-Drums logo. I noticed in the manual that it says they want you to play in the front half of the pad if you're playing on the rim. The head, it doesn't matter, but on the rim, play in the front half. I think that's because the sensor is on the front half. It's a side-mounted design. And if you play in the back half, it will pick it up, but it's a lot quieter. You just have to play harder if you want to hit on the back side of that rim. Also, I should probably briefly mention, it has a lower profile rim, and I like that. It's more natural and it looks cool. If you're putting a piece of rubber on top of a metal rim, you are automatically doing a rim shot at a slightly different angle because the rim is just taller than it should be. So by having a low profile rim like this, it's a little bit more natural. Now moving over to the floor tom, this is the PD10H. It's basically the exact same design, but a little bit larger, so there's nothing new to cover there. The snare drum is the Roland PD12P. So this is like the toms. It's got the same design language, but it has a metal rim, so the chrome accent looks nicer, and the internals on the inside are different. So this is a more advanced pad. Instead of having a trigger close to you under the V-Drums logo, it has 3 head zone piezos under trigger cones in the middle. And this allows them to give you positional sensing, but also simultaneously try to widen an overly sensitive area in the middle. Because if you use one trigger cone, that's the contact point for the drum. So when you play exactly on that, it's going to be a massive trigger spike difference. By having multiple of them, they try to spread that out. I wouldn't say they eliminate it. That would be inaccurate to say, but it's probably better than just having one cone. Now, I wouldn't get overly excited about the positional sensing feature, not because it doesn't have it. It's definitely there, but I noticed that it's pretty extreme. You have to go like all the way near the rim before it kicks in. Meanwhile, on the digital snare, if you go up in price to the nicer drum sets, the positional sensing is actually, in my opinion, more usable and more, fine-tuned and stuff. So it technically has it, but it's nothing really to write home about, in my opinion. The manual for the snare drum also says that it can support 2 different kinds of rim shots. So deep rim shots, or what they call open rim shots, versus shallow rim shots. Some sounds in the module support it, others don't. So you might notice it, or you might not. And like all analog snare drums, with a couple of exceptions in the industry, if you want to play cross stick, you have to toggle this button on screen. It's F6. So when you turn that on, you can play cross stick. It's not always the most accurate thing in the world, and that's just because it's an analog pad. Other companies like ATV or F-Note have their sort of workarounds, and Roland truly solves the problem if you spend more money to buy one of their drum sets with the digital snare drum. So it's not something I would use all the time because I don't think it's reliable until you get to the nicer Roland kits. And the final thing this can do is play with brushes. So here's what it sounds like with it off. So nothing. And here's what it sounds like with it on. I know, I'm an embarrassment to jazz players everywhere, but it works. So now let's touch on the kick drum really briefly. This is not a new pad. This is a kick drum that came out originally on, I believe, the first TD17 drum sets. And I actually used to own this. It's a good kick drum. It triggers very well. You don't have to worry about it dropping hits or something. It may not look like it, but there is room on there for double beaters. And it's a foam playing surface. It feels pretty good. It's not like the heaviest kick drum of all time. I kind of wish the front leg element, because it's like a unified design, I kind of wish that it was a little bit wider. It does vibrate a lot, especially if you're using double pedals with it. So it triggers well, it feels nice, but the more expensive kick drums in Roland's lineup, they definitely feel weightier and all that sort of stuff. If you're wondering what that bubbling is on the front of the kick drum, that's not the strike surface itself. It's the free kick drum patch that comes in the box. The design of the patch is great. It's not going anywhere. However, I didn't press in on the patch enough when I was doing the install apparently, so the bubble formed. But it's not a problem with the kick drum itself, and I like that they include it. Okay, so now let's talk about the actual really important stuff, which is the Roland V31 module. So this is very important. They took the sound engine from their $2,900 module and put it inside of a drum set that costs less than the module it's taken from. This is a really big move, and because of that, this thing is awesome. According to Michael Shack, the V31 has basically everything the V71 has. The same motherboard architecture, CPU, sound engine, the same sounds, the same kits, and the same editing features. Okay, so let's take a second to talk about the ports. This module uses a cable snake. We've got an 1/8" headphone connection right here. Going to the left side of the module, we've got 5-pin MIDI out. There's also a USB-C connection, which is how you can record MIDI and audio. I believe it's either 30 or 32 channels of audio. Next to that port is an SD card slot, so that's how you can bring in your own samples. Or you can use it if you want to trigger songs. Moving to the back of the module, there's an 1/8" mix-in port for connecting an outside audio source. But most people are probably going to use Bluetooth, so yeah, I would probably recommend that. There's 2 master outputs, trigger inputs for the second crash, and also an empty one for anything else you want to add, like a side snare, a third crash cymbal, or a 4th tom. And the most surprising connection on this entire module is the USB port for any of the Roland digital pads. That means you can use either of the 2 Roland digital snare drums, the digital ride, or the digital hi-hat. That's really cool. The thing though, is that does it make sense on a drum set of this price? Like, would you really want to add a super expensive, like, what's the snare drum cost these days? Like $1,000 or something? Would that make sense on a $2,000 drum set? Probably not, but sometimes, you know what, you can find a crazy deal on eBay, and if you can find like a snare or the ride or the hi-hats for a really tiny amount of money, it might be worth picking that up and putting it on the drum set. It also works with the Roland Drum Link, so basically the DWE technology. All right, so now let's cover the editing, interface, and other things that stood out to me. Keep in mind, the manual is 121 pages long, and because this isn't a tutorial, I'll be skipping over some stuff for the sake of time. Starting top left, we've got a master out and headphone dial, backing, which controls Bluetooth plus the mixed-in volume, and click. A quick heads up, there's a menu inside of the V31 that lets you change the master output volume to be a permanent decibel level that you choose, and now the dial just controls the headphone level. The headphones get extremely loud. Even going to half volume was too much for me, so I kept it around 25%. The Bluetooth and click volumes are a lot quieter. So initially, I found myself getting distorted volume as I maxed out my phone and the Bluetooth dial. So I solved this problem by going to the Bluetooth menu and then bumping it up by 12 dB there so I could back down the volume on the dial and my phone. I did a similar thing to the click. And speaking of which, I love the metronome. It lets you change between a lot of different sounds.
2.
You can also create accents, and you have complete volume control for each one of those accents. You can pan the click, tap the tempo. Under outputs, you can set it to feed just your headphones, not the master out. And if you're really struggling with a specific rudiment and you can't get any faster, you can actually hold the shift button and go up by 1/10 of a BPM. To the right of the click is the coaching menu. There's a bunch of different tools to help you play faster or more on time, but my favorite is the phrase trainer. It's like a simplified version of that old Roland software called V-Drums Tutor back in the day.
And a great way to practice even if you already know how to read music.
There's over 150 grooves and rudiments with real drum notation on screen. And unlike a drum book, this actually shows you where you played too fast or slow on every single drum and cymbal. Plus, it gives you a score at the end. Now let's switch to sound editing, starting with the quick settings adjustments on the home screen. So the TD316 used to have dedicated ambience, bass, and treble dials up top, but this new module got rid of those. They put them under the F2 button called Global Tone. I don't like that they got rid of the dials, but at least they're still here in software form. The module can also play itself if you press this button right here as you edit or walk around front of house. So that's a useful feature. Another quick adjustment is that if you press Tools, Effects, Switch, you can turn off specific parts of the ambience and effects. The Easy Edit button is a condensed menu with really simple adjustments. This module lets you stack 3 instruments or one-shot samples on top of each other. I found Roland has a lot of sounds that are included specifically to be used not really by themselves, but as a secondary sound to the main layer to give you more attack on the kick drum or more snap on the snare drum. Be careful when stacking stuff because it makes your kit louder. In fact, a bunch of these Roland kits are not balanced. You actually have to go in there and adjust the volume up and down if you want everything to be even. There's also muffling and tuning, which can be chained together, or you can break the connection to change each layer independently. So that's the Easy Edit button. It's designed to be really simple and not intimidate like people who are getting into drum modules for the first time. The deep settings are under the menu button. The instrument menu lets you change tuning, muffling, virtual shell depth, overtone volume, how tight the snare wire is, multiple thicknesses of the snare wire, how loud the wire snap is in the mix, virtual mic distance, multiple types of batter heads, and then a separate instrument pitch, sweep, decay, and dynamic enhancer. Keep in mind, this is just for instrument A. You can also make these same adjustments for B and C layers of the stack too. Related to the snare drum, there's a different menu where you can change the snare buzz for every zone of every drum and cymbal on the kit. So for example, I don't know why you would do this, but if you think the snare buzz is too loud on the rim of the floor tom, you can, turn that off or turn it down. Another menu lets you change the cross stick volume and the snare strainer throw volume. So back to V-Edit, those are the snare options. But if it's a kick drum, you get different options. We can change the material of the virtual kick drum beater and the size of the mic. The adjustments for the hi-hat are virtual size and thickness of the metal. When you switch to the ride, you have multiple different types of sizzle add-ons, like rivets, and how loud they are, and a low cut. I wouldn't really go ham on all these different settings because subtlety is key. If you push them too far, they get very cartoon-like, but you can do a lot of cool stuff in this menu. And that's the reason why Roland modules sound the way they do, because they want to have these adjustment options. On the bottom of the screen, we've also got a tab for transient, another one for EQ, and another one for layer mode. Now backing out and going to another menu, the next one is pad volume. You have panning and volume control of every single zone of every single drum and cymbal on the set. So for example, if you think on average the bow is too quiet, you can break the zones by unlinking them and then go turn up that particular zone. There's also a minimum volume tab, which is great for drums that need to have dynamics, but also need to play at a certain volume level no matter how softly you hit the drum. The module also has EQ menus for individual pads and the entire drum set, along with compression for both the individual drums and cymbals, but also the entire drum set. There are two basic compressors. There's standard and FET. Now let's back out and talk about ambience. Ambience is the combination of your overhead mics, room mics, reverb, and kit resonance. So here you can adjust the levels of each of them, or tab to the F buttons to do a deep dive into manual adjustments for each of them. Sometimes it's hard to tell what your changes are actually doing for the sound, so if you want to hear the kit ambience just by itself, you can press F6 and listen to that. On the bottom row of tabs, here's what kit ambience looks like. And be aware, this is just a part of a chain, as you can see on the top row of tabs, and you can go through and adjust those. Here's the reverb tab, same tabs up top as well. There's the virtual room tab and the overheads tab. Within overheads, they also have an assign tab, filter tab, and sends tab. So back into the main menu and onto bus, I'm going to be honest, this part of the module is beyond my pay grade, but you can do things like sidechain compression here. I'm sure the sound engineers and preset kit builder dudes are going to love this part of the module. So here's pad assign, pad send tab, FX edit, sidechain, and bus rev. Now be aware, this kind of stuff is intimidating, but what I'm trying to show you in this part of the video is that the module has very basic parts, like easy edit, and you can just live there. But I'm showing you that under the hood, if you want to go exploring, there's a crazy amount of depth, but you can also just ignore it. Now finally, let's just run through the system menu. We got Wi-Fi for software updates and sending new kits to your module from the Roland Cloud app on your phone. The MIDI menu has literally every MIDI option under the sun. The outputs menu is really important. If you're playing live, you can send a dry mix to front of house, but have a lot of ambience on your headphones. And the final thing to mention is that there's going to be a V31 desktop editor, but it will not be available until later this year. So my overall thoughts about this module is that it's very, very impressive. Roland is finally going all in and really making sure that they have a strong foothold on their drum sets under $2,000. This module is fantastic for the price. Okay, so now that you have an idea of what this drum set is like, let's talk about pricing and competition. So when I'm making this, the only other $2,000 electronic drum set, because that's how much this is launching at, is the Alesis Strata Core. There's also the Club Expanded, which is magically $5 cheaper. That's like cheaper pads, but the size are slightly bigger. It's a whole kind of convoluted situation. Let's just talk about the Core versus this drum set. When I played that drum set, I had a great time because the sound quality was really, really good and the editing was very, very strong. The drum set has a lot going for it. However, if I'm comparing this Roland drum set versus that Alesis drum set, I think the Roland drum set is just a stronger option. This module has more editing. It's a more advanced module, in my opinion. I think the latency is a little bit lower. It also is more trustworthy in trigger accuracy. So I'm not trying to say the Alesis drum set is bad. It's cool in a lot of ways, and I wouldn't fault anyone from buying it. But that's the only competition right now. You have to go up in price to the F Note 3 Style B, which is getting harder to find in the US. It's still around, but due to situations in the world, it's getting harder to find those drum sets, and it's an extra $500. And then if you go down in price to $1,700, then you're looking at the Yamaha DTX 6K Mesh, or I can't remember the exact model number of that. And that's a solid drum set, but it is $300 cheaper, so it's not exactly the same price range we're talking about. This kit is stronger than that one, in my opinion. So $2,000. This drum set is awesome. I can highly recommend it. It's not perfect. No electronic drum set is, but the module is incredibly impressive and the pads are rock solid. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.